What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel, and I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Showtime relationship drama series, The Affair, and how I think it sets itself apart from other shows of its kind. And just so you guys know, this video will contain some mild spoilers, so if by some chance you haven't gotten around to watching this show yet, and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time, let's get into it. The Affair is an American television drama series created by Sarah Treem and Haggai Levi. The series premiered on Showtime on October 12th of 2014, and it ran for 5 seasons, concluding with its final episode on November 3rd of 2019. The series stars Dominic West, Ruth Wilson, Mara Tierney, and Joshua Jackson. And it explores the emotional effects of extramarital relationships, with its episodes often separated into 2 parts, which each half being told from the point of view of a specific character. Now, the use of this dramatic device has been used by Treem to describe The Affair as the Rashomon of relationship dramas. The series won the Golden Globe Award for Best Television Series Drama, and Wilson won for Best Actress Television Series Drama at the 72nd Golden Globe Awards back in 2015. At the 73rd Golden Globe Awards in 2016, Mara Tierney won the award for Best Supporting Actress. Now, at the time of the making of this video, the series has a stellar 86% on Rotten Tomatoes with an audience score of 77%. It has a Metascore of 81 on Metacritic, and that's based on 58 critic reviews, with a user score of 7.3 based on 431 user ratings. And finally, it has a 7.9 out of 10 on IMDb with almost 50,000 ratings. So, despite the seemingly lukewarm audience scores and user ratings, this series was absolutely amazing, full stop. The story was interesting and probably pretty relatable for anyone who was the product of divorce due to infidelity. The casting was flawless, absolutely flawless. The acting was amazing, especially by the Big Four. The writing was immaculate the whole way through from start to finish. But it was the way the story was told that really made this series stand out, in my opinion. Telling a story like this from multiple viewpoints is used as a way to show the audience how 4 different people could see and remember the same set of events in completely different ways. The nuance that the writers presented in their work in this series was so good. And the way the actors embraced the small changes as they filmed the same scenes multiple times really showed just how they had truly mastered their craft. These are the things that draw you in the beginning. Also, the fact that the story skips between the present and the past gives you some answers to the test up front. Just enough, in fact, to further pique your interest while the story gets its footing. It's the very thing that makes you start to care about these characters before you typically might in other shows. And I think that's the real power of this particular show. Now, the main character, Noah, played brilliantly by Dominic West, is a bit of a dreamer. And it makes total sense that he's a creative. If you haven't seen the show, he's a writer. And a teacher, but he really wants to be a writer. A good writer. Having just released a book that basically no one read, and is trying to write a second book in an effort to prove to his wife Helen, but mostly to himself, that he's not a complete failure. Now, he's married to Helen, played by Mara Tierney, a woman of privilege that he met in college, who is essentially having their family's entire life funded by her wealthy parents living out in Montauk. But they have 4 kids. Count them. 4. And when the family goes to visit Helen's parents for the summer in the pilot episode, Noah meets Allison, played by Ruth Wilson, a local, a waitress, and the wife of Cole, played by Joshua Jackson, or Pacey, if you know, you know. A part owner in his family's ranch in Montauk. But Cole and Allison are still mourning the loss of their child, their only child, Gabriel, who died a few years prior. And this sets the stage for our story. Now, Noah seems attracted to Allison's darkness. In fact, early in season 1, after dancing dangerously around the issue, the pair finally consummate their affair by having sex. And it's after that that Noah tells Allison that there's nothing about her that seems easy, and that whatever darkness she thinks she's hiding is written all over her face, but that he kind of likes it. Now, we find out later in the series that it's primarily because Noah has a darkness of his own. And despite the brief tiff between the pair, they decide to continue their affair for the remainder of the summer. And, Noah appears convinced that Allison is his one true love. He even says so at one point in the series. And eventually he does leave his wife with 4 children. And he moves in with Allison, eventually. And Allison ends up pregnant with another baby, this time a girl named Joni. And basically we spend the rest of the series watching the dominoes fall down. And it's the toppling of the dominoes that really makes this show intriguing. Because we get to see the effects that the seemingly simple act of infidelity can have on generations of a family. How one selfish act can change the lives of more than just the people who commit that act, and that the ripple effect can last literally for decades. Now, there's a scene that takes place in season 2 of the show that really lays Noah's character as bare as any character can be, where he says quite plainly during a therapy session to his therapist that he dwelled on the scornful looks he felt he had received from 3 key women in his life at different times. Now, these women being Helen, his, by this time, ex-wife, Allison, by this time, his live-in baby mama, and Whitney, his obnoxious oldest daughter. And when he combined that with the fact that even though he was with Allison, his one true love, he had considered cheating on her both with his publicist while he was on his book tour and one of his students, that he was, and I quote, a terrible, terrible, sick, bad guy. He said his behavior with his daughter, that being that in a drug-induced state during a hurricane, while his child, at the time he thought to be his child, was being born, he was at a party. Zooted out of his mind, and he accidentally happened upon his daughter naked in a jacuzzi with one of her classmates from college. And he explained to his therapist that that moment made him want to die, and that he hadn't seen or spoken to his daughter since. He talked about his father, who he said did not commit the act of adultery, but was a terrible husband in a myriad of other ways, as his sick wife needed care, which Noah was stuck supplying. And that just because Noah had cheated on Helen, he saw himself being perceived as a villain. He went on to note that Helen used to read the obituaries to see who loved and who was loved, whereas he looked at the person's achievements to consider whether or not they had a good life. He said that his new book, this would be his 3rd book at this point, was focusing on World War II military hero Omar Bradley. And he wondered if Bradley's achievements would be seen as less than if he turned out to have committed adultery with Marlene Dietrich. He wondered if Bradley had been simply a good husband and stayed home, would he have been such a brilliant military tactician? Ultimately, he wondered if it was possible to be both a good man and a great one. That was his point. He molded the examples of Jefferson and Hamilton, Picasso and Hemingway, all great men who were all cheaters. They did what they wanted and were brilliant, he said. And as the scene came to an end, he admitted that he wanted to be a good husband and father, but that he also wanted to go to France, research Bradley's life, and fuck a lot of women. He just didn't want to be dishonest about his intentions. That was Noah Soloway in a nutshell, and that's why this series was so brilliant. It made you revel in Noah's imperfection and see some of him in you, even if you've never quite gone to some of the lengths that he did in this particular story. Now, Noah eventually loses his family both by walking out on them and by them completely kind of turning their back on him, for a while at least. Even though when Helen first finds out about his infidelity, she fights for him. He even loses Allison eventually when he finds out that Joni isn't his daughter because Allison had a brief affair with Cole, her ex-husband, after they had gotten together. And this is kind of interesting because Noah only sees it from his point of view, having sacrificed essentially everything to be with Allison. Funnily enough, as his personal life seemed to be collapsing all around him, his creative aspirations seemed to be coming to fruition. Because his second book is literally about the affair he had with Allison, even though he changes the names and stuff like that. And it winds up being a huge hit. And Noah becomes at least pseudo-famous, and he makes a good deal of money. In fact, the writers of the show seem to tie Noah's family and his career together in the most interesting of ways, surely trying to make us understand that he can't have both. And it all truly comes crashing down when Noah winds up paying quite a heavy price for something that happens in the series. We think in order to make amends for the wrong he did to Helen when he cheated on her with Allison. But later in the series, Helen finds out something that makes her think that he may have done what he did to protect Allison instead, which makes Helen finally get over her guilt about the price that Noah had to pay and turn her back on him for good, or so we think. Turns out, he did what he did in an effort to punish himself for a really awful choice he made concerning his mother when he was a young man. And, this is the darkness that I talked about earlier. But Noah seems to have learned what is most important in life by the time the story is done, which leaves you with a feeling of both hope and satisfaction. Now, as I said, this story features 4 main characters. But by the time you get to the end of this tale, you understand, or at least you should, that this is a story about Noah Soloway, the teacher, the writer, the dreamer, and the extremely complex journey he goes on in order to find what I like to call the meaning of life, or at least the meaning of his life, despite the final season focusing mainly on Joni as an adult. Noah Soloway is a complicated man, to be sure. And he does some things that'll make you see him as a horrible person at best. And at best, wildly irresponsible. But he also does some incredible things in the hopes of atoning for his many, many sins, which I think makes you see the shades of gray that exist within the character. Now, I'll admit to you, honestly, this series can be a challenging watch for sure, especially in binge mode, I think mostly due to the episode count and the episode runtimes. But it's absolutely worth it if you can manage to power through. And though I thought the show was indeed hurt by Ruth Wilson's abrupt exit in the penultimate season, ultimately making you wonder if the final season would have still gone the way it did had she stayed, this show still manages to stick the landing at the end. What do I always tell you guys? You have to land the plane. Nobody cares about a great takeoff or smooth flight if you crash the plane 100 feet from the gate. And this show really, really, again, like I said, they stick the landing at the end. And I think we're left with a final image that leaves you with the feeling that Noah Soloway indeed got his happy ending, whether he deserved it or not. But what do you guys think? Have you seen The Affair yet? If you have, did you like it? Or did you find that it wasn't really for you? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you who might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. Also, be sure to go and check out themadScreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. And I'll catch y'all in the next video.